Hi guys, Mike here. So Corona 8 just dropped and we're going to go over some of its features. If you want to get Corona 8 to your computer, just go to Corona Renderer's website and download it from here. So this is the easiest and fastest way of getting it. Also, we're going to be going through some of the features that I found to be the most interesting for us ArchViz artists. So if you're a designer, architect, or you just want to learn 3ds Max, those are going to be mostly features for you. Rest is, well, a long list, but we ignored them because they're not as interesting for you guys. So let's get on with it and just jump straight into 3ds Max. So as you can see, I've got this very simple scene that we prepared for you to, well, talk about the features. The list is long, as I mentioned, but we're going to go over those few features that I found to be cool. Okay, feature number one is going to be something that really is strange, but also very exciting. So I would really put it as ambient occlusion on steroids, and that's called a curvature map. Curvature map is something that, well, really works with mostly your object's curvature. Why it is cool and how are we going to be using it? Well, first of all, let's think about the curvature map and where we can find it. So it's solely part of Corona Renderer and we can find it somewhere around here. It looks like this. It has 4 nodes where you can connect some of the maps. So it's base color, convex, concave, and max distance. I really think this should be called opacity for the effect because it's going to be a little bit easier to understand for most of the people, but we're going to get there in a second. So how are we going to use this map and where do you plug it in? You mostly will be plugging it into your base color, and this is pretty much how it looks like. So it not only covers the objects, let's say convex, but it also covers all of those elements that are, well, inside and outside. So it doesn't create a linear effect like AO would. It's a little bit different. And because of that, we also have a really cool features that I'm going to go over. First of all, we've got maximum distance. So just like with AO, we can decide where the effect is going to really reside. And as you can see, we do have a little bit of that green and red colors. So this is convex, seen in those areas that are, let's say, outside, and green in my case is the inwards or just let's say depressions. So as you can see, it really covers amazing areas. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to control both of those values, let's say, independently, and this would be really cool. At least I think, but fortunately we can work at least with the maximum distance and decide a little bit where the effect is going to take place. We've got max ray directionality, so it pretty much tells us what angle it's going to start to kick in. So probably you're going to use almost maximum values for most of the objects, but this is a very cool feature that I think a lot of you will be using quite a lot in the future. Next thing that I wanted to talk with you about is Corona Slicer. This feature is, well, already long anticipated. It was a highly requested feature and it really works like this. We already talked about it. We had a few webinars before and I mentioned it. Also, I made a super video on that. So if you want to, you can just watch it at some point on our YouTube channel. But the interesting parts of noise is, the slicer material is the ease of use. And because a lot of people don't have any idea where to use it or how to use it apart from just slicing through objects and creating some NFTs, I think it's going to be nice to, well, go over some use cases. Yes, I think adding a portal into your sculpture's head is not necessarily going to be a good thing, but please notice that there's a window in there, and this is going to be huge because this way you can quickly add windows, doors, lamps, and a lot of, let's say, light sockets to your objects without really needing any need for you to manipulate the mesh. So you don't have to necessarily destroy the mesh, remodel it every time you want to move your window slightly because you want to work a little bit better with your lighting. And I believe this is extremely strong feature that is not only going to be used for product shots. I believe it's going to be one of those game changers for our industry, because at some point everybody's going to have a little bit of say, and they will probably come up with even more interesting ways of using this method. So I strongly recommend you check it out. Next key feature that I wanted to talk about with you is our Corona scatter, or as it was formerly known, Corona scatter. So now it was rebranded for the sake of greater good. They changed its name to Chaos Scatter. What it means is that the scatter is going to be working independently between V-Ray and Corona, so it's going to be, let's say, a medium connecting them. I hope that we're going to also get similar solutions like, for example, V-Ray Fur or V-Ray plane for Corona, so Chaos plane, I guess, and we're going to probably expect that quite soon. So here I've got my Chaos scatter, and really I need to talk quite a lot about the options that we have in here, because apart from those very cool things that we can now do with our amazing scatter, we also have a little bit more control over all of the features of it. So those features and those controls include controlling all of the properties independently with different colors. So now you will be able to add colors to your transformations. So it means that each axis is going to be controlled with a gradient from blue, red, or green to black. So it means that X is red, Y is green, and Z values are going to be controlled by gradients between black and blue. So maximum blue means maximum effect. Okay, and you can plug this in to any of your slots, and that's really powerful because you're going to get a lot of very good options there. Let's talk a little bit about preserve rotation. Before, when you had some kind of object and you wanted to just add it into your scene, you had to make sure that the pivot and you reset the X form for it. So it was a little bit annoying and time consuming because you had to scout for that one object that was problematic in your scene. But regardless, it's a change, and now you can really preserve the model's rotation, so it kind of rotates it for you. Really amazing, a huge time saver, really. So they also added, I'm guessing this is their, let's say, independent study. They added the Z value to 360. Now, once you create your new scatter, it's going to have this value on. It's a very strong thing to add, and I think it's going to be amazing. So let's really start talking about the features that I found to be interesting. So first of all, we've got areas. Areas are amazing, really, because before, to make this work, you had to really go over some very elaborate distance mapping, and it wasn't fun. But now what we can do to make this, to speed up our process, is to just go for splines, create a rectangle, circle, whatever you like, really, and add it as an area, either inclusion or exclusion. So we can really do that now. So let's go to our modify panel, click on the areas, and we can now click on include our, let's say, area. Well, everything is gone, because now how it works is this area of inclusion is going to determine where the scatter is supposed to be. And look at that, it's now well, working amazingly fast. It's super interactive, and it's going to allow you to create all of those effects in seconds instead of minutes, and it's fully interactive, so you can play with it all the time. What is also going to be a cool feature, and I found it to be really amazing, is that now once you select that area, you can control that areas, let's say, fall off. So you don't necessarily have to create a patch like this. It can actually grow in and out of existence thanks to some kind of translation, or let's say gradient. I wish we could work with multiple of those at the same time, but I believe it's for the better. So spline includes, so we need to play a little bit with our values, so we can now test what's going to happen if I change this. You can see that we do have a little bit of that transition, so let's make it a little bit bigger, or let's just go for near values, and you can also see that the near values are changing our objects. That's super powerful and I love it. So you can just imagine how powerful it is going to be for your rendering. But we can also add some objects as exclude splines. So pretty much the same idea, but it's going to create some kind of erosion around our objects. Same idea, same distance options, so you can neatly translate from one place to another. One feature that Corona Renderer is really proud of, from what I understand, is that they've added something called a stepping distance, or let's say slope distance. So allow me to find it first, because obviously this is a new thing for me as well. And right now I cannot really see the distance. Okay, it's slope limitation. It's a little bit higher. Honestly, I think it should be a little bit closer to rotation, because I was actually looking for it there, but maybe it's just me. So again, let's select one of the objects that we're interested in. Okay, I don't want to exclude that element now. So we've got our scatter, but this is not the object I wanted to select. So let's just quickly grab our ground. And most of the time you're going to be working with situations where you kind of have a lawn and it looks okay. So it's a small problem. But if you're going to have this situation where you have some, elements or cliffs in your scene, you're going to have a little bit of bad time figuring out how to avoid grass growing on sides of your objects. And in some cases, it's going to be extremely time consuming to really fix this. So instead of actually fixing it, we're going to do a workaround for it. And that's really the slope limitation I'm talking about. So what it means is we've got our zero value of the angle, so the starting angle, and the limit at which our growth is going to be accepted. So if I type in 90, you're going to see that we kind of lost a few of those, but now 45 means that we're not going to get any of our grass on the sides. And I believe this is super powerful because it's going to save a ton of your time, depending obviously on the scene, but this is huge. Next huge thing that I found to be interesting in the newest Corona, and I think it's going to be one of the best features out there, is now you can project some textures onto the objects that you will be working with. So it's a very simple process. Instead of, working with multiple maps for this kind of, let's say, endeavor where you have to create distance mapping and whatnot, all you need to do is create a new physical material that you're going to work with and grab a map that, in this case, is going to be in chaos. Because, let's make things a little bit less confusing next time. So, chaos scatter surface color texture map. Okay, this is a little bit of a tongue twister, I guess, but at some point they will probably come up with some better names. So what we have here is hue randomization and gamma randomization, same as we would have in Corona multi-texture map, but in reality they probably wanted to make this a little bit easier for you to not be forced to add all of those nodes together, because then our shader would be really huge chains, and again, very confusing. So this is an easier solution, I guess. So what we're going to do is add a bitmap, and allow me to just grab any texture of a carpet that I have. So carpet 02, let's just take this in. custom map. So this is also another thing that we need to remember about. So we got two options. We're either going to be using the surface diffuse map, and it's going to project on our scattered objects, or we can just select the custom map, and this way we're going to project it directly onto our objects. And because I'm super lazy, I'm going to make sure to add all of that in, and now we're going to be able to see a little bit of that nice projection. So what it means is we're getting the projection that's on top of our main object. So I probably need to correct some UVW map on this object to really be able to see the carpet for myself. So what do we see in here? Okay, I think I need to release my camera to be able to see it. 1 second. That's probably going to be cut. Okay, so we've got our camera, and now while looking at it, okay, it's not exactly a carpet I would expect. Why is that? Is it the areas that we are now limiting? No, it's another feature. It's a next long-awaited feature. It saves a ton of your resources. So what you can do is you can select your chaos scatter, and just by doing so, you can go to camera clipping and enable this really easy solution. So camera clipping, and now we can see that this is actually a carpet. So camera clipping is going to allow you to create area of inclusion. Let's say this is pretty much working the same way in the view of your camera. Unfortunately, you have to do the clipping for each and every scatter that you haven't seen. I would expect this to be part of Corona camera, but I understand that since this is now going to be chaos scatter instead of Corona scatter, I think they're going to also add chaos camera at some point. This is getting a little bit confusing, but we're going to go through it. Okay, so we've got that option, but this is not really the only, or let's say not the last thing they added. So the biggest change to your scatters is going to be some amazing features. So now, if we select our scatter and wait a second till 3ds Max really thinks about this, we've got edit instances option. Also, a warning that you're going to be able to edit only those instances that you can see in the viewport. So you may be forced to go a little bit lower and display a few more of those. But I'm not going to go there, and I'm just going to grab one of those instances and we're going to scale it up. What's going to happen is, well, very unfortunately, you're going to also be using the same pivots of your objects as you have them in your scene. So it kind of makes it harder to work if the pivot isn't going to be corrected. So make sure to work on that. So that's really going to come down to you not being too sloppy. Again, we've got our amazing option, and look at that. I just made this one instance bigger. You cannot even imagine how many times I had this problem where just one scattered object was annoying me because of its rotation, scale, or whatever. Now this is all gone, and you can really do it manually. So this is amazing. Although I found a few problems with it. This one is already listed on the Corona's website, so it ignores avoid collision. So whenever you've got this, it's not going to be calculated in avoiding collisions because, well, it makes sense. Before objects are scattered, the collisions are calculated. So since we kind of made some changes, well, maybe they will work on it, but this is not really the huge problem I think some of you may actually found this to be. So as you can see, I just resetted my camera clipping and it's still here, right? So we're just going to move around our camera, and what's going to happen is that the object that was manipulated by me is going to remain in the same spot. So this also includes the area of inclusion and exclusion. So those objects are going to be still there. And okay, it's fair enough. Let's keep them there. But how do you reset this? There's no option to reset your changes. Let's say I have my perfect scatter and I messed something up. there's no way to really reset that. Okay, there is some way, but you can now change the random seed, and if you go back, the object is there, so that's cool. There's some kind of cache in this whole thing. Okay, so we can still work with instances, but how do you reset this? You have to reset your scene, and resetting your scene is also going to reset all the transformations. So if I now reset my scene after saving and load the same thing, my transformations are going to be lost. So the cache clears out, and this is a huge limitation that I'm sure that they will figure out later. What? It stayed. It actually stayed. So maybe this was part of daily build at some point, but previously this wasn't really working like that. Okay, so problem solved. Thank you very much. Let's continue. So now let's move on to our next feature, because we kind of got two in one. We've got our chaos surface map scatter whatever. So the long name is actually chaos scatter surface color texture map. Yeah, really rolls off your tongue, but it works marvelously, and I really love this feature because, let's be honest, it's super powerful. But camera clipping areas, it's even better because, well, why not? And let's move on to our next feature now. Next feature I want to talk about with you is the tail. So nope, not that kind of tail, it's the reflection tail. It's going to be part of your materials, and it can be found in advanced options. It's really going to be right here, kind of hidden. Not only we can now use complex IOR for physical materials, that's now old news because Corona 7 really introduced that, but we now have the base tail. Okay, so what does it do? What it really changes is it adds a little bit of blur to the more, let's say, brighter reflections on your objects. It kind of looks exactly the same way as the roughness map, or let's say a regular roughness, but I think it's actually going to be good for those of you that want to work with product shots or just make your images a little bit more pixel perfect. I personally prefer to use the default roughness and glossiness, but it is going to be extremely good. It also works with caustics, but for the render's sake, I'm not going to be working on with it. But there is something about the caustics that you also need to hear about. So now you're going to be able to include and exclude objects from your caustics, and I think it's going to be quite good. But this brings us to something that I really wanted to talk about, and that is the decal. You can imagine that making this car was a little bit of a mix of fun and a little bit of a chore. Luckily, Corona came to rescue, and they created a new map. Before, I would be forced into making all of those maps using a distance map and some kind of strange UVW mapping. Yes, it's good, but look at this. Now I can just select whatever decal I want and just simply move it, and all of those stickers are going to be following. So first of all, let's select the bigger one. And yes, obviously this is not the VizAcademy car. I just had to change the logos from my client for obvious reasons. And the very cool thing about this whole shebang is that it allows you to work with multiple materials at the same time. So it's literally going to be able to override everything. Before, this was very hard. You had to create multiple materials that had multiple mixes connected by one mask. Annoying and very time consuming. So this is a huge time saver and really a godsend feature from Corona. So thank you very much for adding it in, because it helped me a lot. Personally, I'm going to be using it all the time. So how do we really work with this kind of map? As you can see, I had to add quite a lot of stickers, but let's just boil this down to one random material. So all we need to do is create any material, really any. Because Corona decal is actually an object in Corona. So you have to go to creation panel, pick Corona, and here we're going to see this as our object. And this is it. You just create the object. You have a few options in here. For example, you can override the displacement, so you can add some damage to some walls or extrusions. Super powerful option all the way. So now let's just add this sticker to this decal, and we will be able to instantly start rendering and adding it into our scene. You can see that it's already working with that object. You can include and exclude groups of objects from your work, and it also has a few additional amazing options that I would like to go over with you some other time. Maybe I'm going to be doing this during our lessons, but really this is amazing, and it was a godsend feature. Really, I cannot understate how beautiful and really helpful this option is. Possible use cases would be stickers, posters, grudge, frost, snow, you name it. There's a ton of options. It has gradients to really, it's an amazing feature. Love it all the way. And we're going to move on to the next option. So the next one is really the biggest one. Out of them all, out of this whole shebang, I think the biggest and most noticeable change is going to be the one that was that occurred in tone mapping. So tone mapping for a long time spoiled us with so many features that I didn't know that I needed until I got them. So tone mapping constantly added new and new features each time. The UI or video frame buffer was constantly reworked. To some extent, it was never as confusing as this one feature. But now, as one of the, let's say, developers, or I would say one of the staff members for Corona puts it, we've got one new option, and that is the ESOT, whatever this stands for. So applies approximate, that. So what it does, or how it's called by that staff member, make my image pretty. So this was the image that I was working on originally. Then Corona 8 came out, and this was the change that this button instantly adds. So how it works, it clamps the highlights a little bit better than the highlight compression. It works with a little bit richer color depth, and well, it kind of gives you this amazing difference where here everything was grayed out and wasn't looking so good. Here in with this new make my image pretty button, it really rocks. Love this option, but unfortunately the whole UI of tone mapping was reworked. You're going to have to, well, kind of figure it out for yourself, but we've got the option to reset it, and I'm not going to be clicking it, but it's going to go to something that you're not used to. Actually, let's do it. So let's reset this, and now we've got some options that weren't here before. So first of all, and now what is this? It's a plus where you can add new elements or new effects. You can mix and match them. You can also use presets. So it's going to be like Instagram, another type of LUT, I would say, but it works a little bit differently because you can just experiment on a broader scale with your image. And this is, well, another huge redo for Corona. Unfortunately, yes, it's going to take some time to figure all the stuff out, but I really love it. So for example, the order in which you add all the elements in your tone mapping is now going to have impact on how the tone mapping really works. So again, you're going to have a little bit more variety in rendering, which is super cool. I personally recommend you to make sure to save your pre-comp once you're done, because you will be probably reusing it for most of your scenes. And well, maybe the pre-comp that they suggest as default is not going to be the one you would like to work with. But in my case, I kind of love it. So I'm just going to stick to what they gave us. Another probably problematic element is that right now you cannot just see, oh, they also fixed that. Look at this. I was about to tell you that you can no longer scroll through the LUTs, but they added it in. So thank you very much. I thought that we're going to be forced to using our arrows, but again, they fixed it. So it's amazing. So this is a huge, big change, but not the biggest one really, because the biggest one is Corona Cosmos. So cannot open Cosmos browser because Cosmos service is not running. Okay, you're going to run into this problem. So once you install your Corona 8, you're also going to be installing Cosmos again. You're going to be You're going to be also installing Cosmos. So Chaos Cosmos is really going to be something that you have to start. So let's just type in start Corona, again, Chaos Cosmos browser. Those names are really going to be longer and longer, I guess. But all you need to do is just wait for the browser to load. You log into your account, and once you're logged in, you're going to be able to use the browser, or let's say you're going to be able to open it in 3ds Max. So let's click it once more. So now this independent browser opens on my next screen. But what is Chaos Cosmos? So I would say that this is almost poetic, because at this point we're dealing with Cosmos that was born out of chaos. So this this kind of makes brings us a little bit closer to some mythical themes. Maybe they're going to add another let's say feature that's going to be called Zeus or Mars at some point. But what does it do? What is it? So Cosmos is a great repository of 3D assets. it comes with a lot of 3D models, and the funny thing is right now they have 1,457 models, but the first time I opened this library it was a little bit less. So there's constantly adding it real time, almost. We've got more than 200, actually 200 assets for materials. And again, those are physically based materials. Also, Cosmos is going to be useful for all of you guys that work with different software that is connected to Chaos. So it means that all of those materials are going to be easily translatable to other software, so you're going to have more consistent effects, and that's amazing, and I love it. We have models, materials, and AGRIs, so this is huge. My favorite element of all the models is actually 3D people. Those are kind of hard to get, and they usually are very expensive, and getting a few of them from such amazing companies as the listed creators here are, well, it's just great. So let's go back to the people and let's demonstrate how to use it. You may have noticed that I clicked download on one of those persons, and you just wait for this asset to download. Once it's there, you're going to be able to just download it, and luckily I've got this guy who's on his phone inside of the car. Probably I would have to manipulate it a little bit further. It's going to be loaded as a proxy for the model, so it's super fast to work with. And now the grand finale is that you can just start rendering right away, and it's going to look real good, because those people, okay, this guy should not be texting while driving, but it really is an amazing tool that I hope that you're going to enjoy using. So this was the list of the my features that I found to be interesting in the newest release of Corona. So tell me which one of those you found to be the most exciting or most surprising in the comments. Also remember to like and subscribe, and if you want to join our online course to dive a little bit deeper into 3ds Max and Corona renderer itself, make sure to visit VizAcademy UK and check the available dates, and well, just sign up today. Thank you very much, and see you in our class. Bye bye.